With the live sessions we've had here in the Total Ashford studios over the last couple of months or so, we've covered a lot of different genres, from sort of rock bands with All the King's Men a few weeks ago to folk with Green Diesel, as you'll see on the website very soon. And one of the great sort of promoters of folk music in the local area is Alan Castle, BEM, as he was announced at the beginning of January, and he joins us in the studio now. Hello, Alan.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us in the studio.
Thank you for giving me the chance.
So, BEM, British Empire Medal. Bit of a shock?
A complete shock. Yeah. No, I wasn't aware of it until middle of November, when I suddenly got a letter through the post with the Home Office or some such address on the front of it, and thought, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Have I been called up?
MI5 finally want you?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And of course, you know, I don't know with these things, well, I don't know from these things, but I've been told you have to keep them a secret. You can't tell anybody.
That's right, yeah.
How difficult was that?
Not very difficult, because at that time of year, you're not mixing with too many people, and not too many festivals and things.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too bad, but I did drop a few hints to one or two people.
Right, fantastic. Well, congratulations anyway.
Thanks very much.
Okay. You mentioned festivals there. One of the great promoters of the Tenterden Folk Festival, which is every year in...
It's the first Saturday in October,
yeah.
And the days surrounding it. It's now 4 days.
It's a 4-day event. Does it warrant it?
In what way?
Is there enough interest in folk music to warrant a 4-day festival?
I keep being told to extend it to a week. But
I'm just playing devil's advocate there,
Yeah,
but it's an interesting, thing. Some of the festivals, the 1-day events like the Create Festival in Ashford, is literally just 1 day with 4 stages, but you do it over literally a 4-day weekend, so Thursday,
right.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah, kicks off Thursday evening with a fundraising concert these days, and then goes on through to the last sing-around, which normally finishes about midnight on the Sunday.
Fantastic. And how long's that been going for now?
This will be the 22nd year coming up this October.
And you've done all of them?
I was one of the founders, yeah.
Right.
It started by accident, in actual fact. I've been running folk clubs in Ashford since about 1973.
Right.
And I was well known to the council and such like, and the then arts officer phoned me up and said, would you like to put on an event to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the railway coming to Ashford?
Right.
So we did a little concert in Tenterden, in the leisure centre, with a couple of guests, one Morris side, and 50 people in the audience. And the next year the council said, what are you doing this year? So I said, well, give us some money and we'll do something. And then the next year we did the same, and it's just sort of grown from there, really.
And so in 2013 it was 4 days. How many venues involved?
Goodness only knows, quite a lot.
And are they all pubs?
No, we use the church hall, we use the town hall. A lot of it goes on in the street where the public can see it for free. A marquee on the recreation ground with 2 stages in it. Anywhere there's space, basically, and sometimes in some unusual places.
That's brilliant stuff. Who's the biggest act you've had play at the Tenterden Folk Festival?
We've had people like Martin Carthy, we've had John Kirkpatrick. This year we've got Ashley Hutchins coming back again, who of course was the founder of Fairport Convention, Steel Eye Span, Albion Band. But we don't necessarily go in for the big names.
Right.
We like to book perhaps you call them the next tier down, the hard-working regular folkers that go to the folk clubs that are still down to earth, but have got big following, work internationally, tour abroad as well as England. And we bring acts over from overseas occasionally.
Right. Wednesday the 19th of February, it's the Folk Awards.
Yeah.
Radio 2 Folk Awards. And we spoke off air earlier on. I wanted to get your sort of idea about who we should be listening to. If you're new to the folk scene, or if you're just kind of you're a folkie of old, but you're now getting back into it, who should we be listening out for at the moment?
I'd probably say don't listen to the Folk Awards, listen to your local radio folk programme.
Right.
Because it's far more representative of real grassroots folk music. On the Folk Awards, you're going to get the Bellowheads with
Right.
a 12-piece band with some absolutely brilliant musicians in it. Absolutely great people, the 2 Johns and everybody else, who are really, really good. But they're not typical. You're not going to find a 12-piece band on many stages in your local folk club. And you can't get the same feel for a huge, great band like that. Don't get me wrong, some of what they get on there is absolutely brilliant, and without people like Martin Carthy, who is sure to be there, you wouldn't have most of the folk singers who are there doing their work today, because it's people like Martin who've inspired people. But the folk awards are very cliquey, very small.
Right.
The people that put those programmes on don't go out to the real folk clubs. They don't see what's going on anywhere other than Cambridge Folk Festival or some of the big festivals. They don't get out to the sticks, to the suburbs. So I think they've lost touch a great deal.
Right. Ashford's very lucky in the fact that it's got on its community radio station, AHBS, a specific specialist folk programme, The Wood and the Wire, with Keith Peverley and Pat Thornby. And they've been going about 2.5 years now. And they've had some fantastic guests in. Luke Jackson, I was there when he recorded a session with them a couple of years ago, I think. And who should we be listening to locally then? Who gets out there and plays locally?
Yeah, well, people like Luke are absolutely fantastic. We've had him at Tenterden on a couple of occasions. He's changed quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 years, really. He's matured and got that much better sound.
I first worked with Luke with AHBS on the bandstand when he was the winner of their Ashford's Got Talent type competition when I think he was about 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah, I think he was 13 or 14 for about 5 years.
Right.
And then finally admitted how old he'd actually got. The age was a problem to him in that at some points he was too young to be in the pubs, and at other points he was too old to go in for the competition. So his age sort of fluctuated a little bit. But yeah, and people like Green Diesel, who we were listening to earlier on, they really illustrate the two opposite ends of the local scene. Now, Luke is very much a singer-songwriter. He doesn't really do anything traditional. Most of his songs are written from his own experience, and he'll play them with just his acoustic guitar most of the time. Whereas Green Diesel were brought up on folk rock. They're too young to have heard it originally in the 60s and 70s, but they heard it from their parents' album collections, and they play a lot of Steel Ice Band, Fairport type music, as well as stuff they've written themselves, like the Hop Festival song that they played earlier on.
So who else should we be listening out for? We've got Luke, got Green Diesel. Who else is there?
There's people like Rude Albert, who are another local band, who may well actually be playing up in the George literally as we're speaking here now.
Right.
There's 3 or 4 of them. They play a mixture of Irish music, English music, self-penned music. There's lots of people around. There's really too many to mention, and they vary from extremes. The Grabham family from just outside in Woodchurch. Dave and Kath were 2 of the people who started off the festival with me. Dave was a Morris dancer in the first place and founded Woodchurch Morris. But he makes a big part of his living these days, playing pub gigs, singing, folk music, all sorts of music, really, mainly folk music.
Yeah.
There's loads of people around. They don't get out and don't get seen enough. That's the thing.
And is there a specific venue in Ashford that you're wanting to put on sort of folk nights and things like that?
Ashford is a little bit of a strange animal at the moment. We, as I say, I started the first folk club in Ashford back in the 70s, which was in the Victoria opposite the railway station.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And that thrived for 3 or 4 years with people like Andy Turner, who a lot of people will know on the folk scene, won Young Singer of the Year award at Sidmouth quite a few years ago. He lives down in Oxford now and plays with all sorts of folk bands down there. His mum still lives in Ashford. And he was a regular at the folk club there when he was about 13, 14. We moved out of there and moved around until we settled at the moment in the Caxton in Tenterden, where we do a monthly session there.
Right.
In Ashford Town Centre, at the moment, the only real folk session I know about is the one in the George, which is the 3rd Tuesday of the month.
Right.
Which is, as I say, on now. That gets a good number of people and some good musicians in there. It's good fun.
Are you a traditionalist when it comes to folk music?
Not so much now as I used to be.
Right.
Things go in cycles. I love traditional music. I can sit there and listen to an a cappella group of 4 70-year-old men, like the Clack, who I booked for the folk festival, and just be absolutely enthralled by their harmonies and their singing. I can listen to a group of people singing sea shanties completely unaccompanied, which would probably bore a lot of people sick. But on the other hand, I can listen to the Green Diesels, I can listen to lots of the young bands, and I get a little bit sick of people that write songs about their own love life and too much of their own personal experience when they're too young to actually had it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, right.
But no, I can, particularly having got involved in St Mary's and seen a bit of a completely different approach to some of the music as well, which mixes folk music with classical music and get jazz and folk mixed. One of my things I always say, I can listen to most music live, even if I wouldn't sit and listen to it on a record or CD or whatever. So no, I don't know whether I'm a traditionalist or broad-minded, but I like all sorts of stuff, really.
You're quite heavily involved with Revelation at St Mary's now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm one of the trustees.
Yeah. We spoke to Chris Dixon in here a few weeks ago about it. How do you think it's gone? How has the last 2 and a bit years gone for you?
Amazingly. No, I think after the first 12 months, we'd got to where we thought we'd be after 2 years.
Right.
We've always said it's going to take 5 years to get it established and get it really there so that people will just blindly buy tickets irrespective of whether they've heard of what's on or not, because they value the judgment of the people that are doing the booking and the running of it. We haven't quite reached that stage yet. And at the moment, we're breaking in a new music programme, which is completely different to part of what we've been doing over the last 2 years.
Is that the Classical Roots series?
That's the Classical Roots series, which is the concert we did the other night, which was a mixture of classical music played by some very good classical musicians merged with what Brahms would have heard in the pubs, if they had them, in the days when he was sitting in Vienna writing the music he was writing. So there was a mixture of first movement of Brahms' symphony and Hungarian gypsy jazz.
Right.
So yeah, but no, there's a folk influence in there, and seeing it played is absolutely amazing. But we're still going to be booking the Courtney Pines, the other people who are going to bring in the big audiences, but we're booking this folklore, jazz, classical
kind of running them alongside
as well,
each other.
Alongside. Instead of putting 12 events on a year, we're putting on 24 events.
It's fantastic.
And hires are increasing.
Right.
We've got the Orb, who a local promoter is putting on. Well, even I've heard of the Orb, and you can't describe them as folk music.
No, and I'm interested in well, everyone knows involved in this how interested I am in going along to see that one. I will be going along to see that one. I've described it previously. The first gig I went to see at St Mary's was Gruff Rhys, who was there with a band from Wales called Inúil. And Gruff Rhys was the one who had the live projectionist up in the balcony, literally, feeding reels of film through projectors onto the screen behind the performer.
Putting his hand in front of it and making shapes and things.
The whole ambience of that night, particularly, I walked into the venue, and I've said this before, and I'm sorry if you're listening to this podcast and you've heard me say this before, but the most astonishing thing about the whole thing was that you walked into St Mary's in the middle of town, bought a can of John Smith, sat down and listened to Rock the Casbah by The Clash in the warm-up to it. You just kind of got the idea that this is going to be something a little bit different.
And there's people dancing in the gallery and dancing in the aisle of the church. And, what a lot of people don't realise is there is a licensed bar. And the licensee is the vicar, and he's often there serving the beer. And people just seem to be so surprised that a church can have a licensed bar. But we make money on the bar. It subsidises the shows. So if you come, have a drink.
Green Diesel, who we listened to earlier on, and who will get their own little podcast as well, have got a show coming up there soon as well, haven't they?
They have, yeah. They're part of a show called 3 Acres and a Cow,
right,
which is a history of land rights and protest in folk song and story.
Right.
There's a guy who's done some work with the English Folk Dance and Song Society up at Cecil Sharp House, who is the lead on it, who does a mixture of storytelling and music about folklore and protest, etc., and does it in unusual way. On one occasion, I know he cycled from venue to venue and used a man-powered generator to actually run the PA systems and things.
Fantastic.
The greenness coming out.
Right.
But he won't be doing that for this show. In support, there's not only Green Diesel, but there's Highworth Folk Band, who are the older children from the Highworth School. And there's also a guy called Adrian O, who's a Thanet-based Irish storyteller and singer who's absolutely fantastic. I've had him down at Tenterden on numerous occasions. So it's a mix of stuff, and it's going to have all sorts of appeal to all sorts of people, I think. Being a farming community, they're going to be interested in some of what's going on, the stories it's telling, with Pete Seeger's death. Folklore, folk song is something that is going through a little bit of a boost in the media at the moment as well. So it's going to be something that's going to change people's ideas of what the music and the stories are about, I think.
Well, you're going to keep us posted on any events folk-wise that are going to be sort of put on in the area for the gig list. And obviously, as we get nearer to the folk festival, you'll be telling us more and more about what's going on with that. But once again, many congratulations on your BEM.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
No, thanks for giving me the chance.